Previously on Infinite Mage, our hero shattered the Void Gate, survived the impossible trials, unleashed the sigil, while the system crumbled and the enemy awakened a cataclysmic wrath. And now the story continues. A mage forged anti-magic, and now the throne burns with stolen power. The stranger leans in, eyes glittering, and asks if you love history, then drops the rumor of the 5 godly generals' armor set. He whispers that the relic can rip open a mage's spirit zone, then drops the final word. It's anti-magic. The listener's brow tightens, sensing a weapon that could shatter every noble's claim to power. He grips the edge of the table, ready to turn the rumor into a weapon of his own. The air crackles with the promise of a new war.
It seems like you enjoy history. Heard of the armor? An artifact that splits a mage's spirit zone.
A stern supervisor orders Chiron to stop his chatter and return to his duties, the tone dripping with contempt. He wants to prove his worth beyond idle talk, but the sharp rebuke stings his pride. He nods, swallowing the rebuke, and retreats to his workstation, muttering a quiet, The brief exchange leaves him simmering, his mind racing for a way to turn the scorn into motivation. The cost? A moment of confidence lost, replaced by a burning need to outshine his doubters. He tightens his grip on his pen, ready to let his work speak louder than words. You feel the exhaustion of endless pages pressing down on Chiron's shoulders.
Sirwan darts through the bustling market, clutching a battered grimoire while the vendor shouts prices. He slams the book onto a wooden stall, demanding a rare spirit zone crystal. The merchant sneers, pointing at a glittering shard, then lunges. But Sirwan unleashes a surge of raw mana, cracking the stone into sparkling shards that rain over the crowd.
Sirwan stalks the moonlit ridge, clutching a tattered grimoire he salvaged from the abandoned stable. He flips to a page describing the spirit zone, whispers the incantation, and feels the world thin around him. A cold wind brushes his cheek as ethereal ribbons coil upward, forming a gateway.
Sirwan thrusts the cracked grimoire into the moonlit ridge, chanting the spirit zone incantation, and a vortex of azure light tears the sky, swallowing the market's chaos and the stone doors alike. He feels his desperate hunger for validation ignite as the vortex promises unrivaled power. Yet the surge threatens to erase his fragile grasp on the ancient ledger and shatter Jun Li's chance to expose the anti-magic conspiracy. The vortex widens, the silent gauntlet-worn mage stares motionless, and an unseen force drags the ledger toward the abyss, leaving the fate of the anti-magic project and Chiron's very existence hanging in trembling uncertainty. We don't just read Manhwa, we dissect it. Subscribe to Manwa with Hari and become part of the crew.
Chiron's cracked hooves clattered against the stable wall as the hunter family's laughter faded, and his eyes fell on the wandering mage's glowing sigil. The mage thrust a trembling hand toward Chiron's chest, whispering spirit zone. A surge of ether ripped open Chiron's mind, flooding him with ancient rune chants, proof that even a peasant can shatter the noble's spellbound cage. Chiron's trembling hands clutch the ancient tome as Junhyuk slams the infinite spellbook open, its pages flaring with stolen incantations. A surge of raw ether ripples through the courtyard, scattering dust and startling the hunting family.
Sirwan clutched the tattered grimoire his hunter family found among the stables, eyes blazing as the wandering mage sliced open the veil to the spirit zone. A surge of raw ether surged through his veins, shattering the noble-only myth. Across Eldoria, Junhyuk watched the newborn mage's spell flare, realizing the infinite spellbook might finally have a true rival. The wound opens a path toward a war that no one sees coming. Sirwan rushes to the stable, breath ragged, demanding why his family left. He learns the official swordsman qualification exam opens tomorrow, a one-time chance that lets only 30 out of 1,000 earn a true blade.
Chiron's breath comes in ragged bursts as he watches a younger trainee gasp. Ha! Ha! The trainee snaps a 10-minute break, huffing like a wind-chilled horse. Chiron's eyes flare, recalling a fire that burned a year ago, an incident he thought buried. The memory sears his thoughts, whispering that everything would shift if Rai entered the palace. He clenches his fists, feeling the weight of unfinished business pressing against his ribs. The hallway echo amplifies his resolve, and he steels himself for a confrontation he cannot yet name. What comes next changes everything. A frantic messenger bursts into the corridor, shouting, "Young Master! Third Young Master!" He reports Regina's urgent summons, demanding Sir One return to the mansion at once.
Sir One storms the manor's hallway, confronting the frantic messenger and demanding answers as the poison dish finally clears, while the head butler's secret report looms like a blade. Sir One feels his resolve fracture, fearing he abandons his training and betrays the loyal butler who risked everything. Yet he also clings to the chance of uncovering the third master's hidden ally. The courtyard erupts with armed guards sealing the exit, leaving Sir One trapped as an unseen force watches from the shadows, promising a confrontation that could shatter the entire mansion.
This is your last warning before the spoiler hits. Subscribe to Manwa with Hari. The courtyard erupts in whispers as Chiron's heart pounds. He knows a death sentence looms, but he still lunges for his father's name, hoping a noble's mercy will spare him. The master watches coldly, his eyes fixed on the contract butler's trembling hands. Lewis steps forward, his voice sharp, demanding an explanation for the scandal that threatens the house's reputation. Chiron's pleas tumble out, begging for a chance to speak with his father before the blade falls. The master's gaze hardens, sealing Chiron's fate with a silent nod.
Why? He was supposed to leave today.
Sir One clutches the rag-torn tome as a cloaked mage whispers, "Step into the spirit zone." The air shivers, and Chiron's pulse syncs with the unseen currents, his humble farmer's hands igniting with raw arcane fire. Sparks flare, defying the noble-only decree, proof that a peasant's will can crack the infinite sky. But the real problem is already in motion. Chiron demands proof of loyalty, his eyes flicking between the trembling noble and the trembling boy. He wants certainty that Chiron will never betray him, but the noble's fear of scandal blocks any confession. Chiron bites his lip, then blurts a half-truth, hoping the vague confession buys time.
Lewis steps into the corridor, eyes narrowed on the noble's accusation. He wants to expose the hypocrisy of noble blood judging commoners. The noble's pride blocks him, spitting out a doctrine that nobility exists to crush threats. Lewis lifts his chin, retorts that any sword can speak, any hand can befriend. He shouts, "If they can hold a conversation with a sword, anyone can be a friend." The noble's sneer deepens, refusing to see the value in a low-born life. Lewis's words ripple, shaking the court's complacency, yet the noble's grip on power tightens.
Chiron clenches his fists, shouting that his resolve matches the noble's challenge, even if it means being cast out. He repeats his promise, declaring his friendship will survive any exile. The noble watches, a flicker of respect breaking through his cold facade, as Chiron's words seal a fragile pact. The cost remains heavy. Chiron may lose his place in the family, but his bond stays unbroken, setting the stage for a rebellion that could reshape the hierarchy.
That's right.
Chiron thrusts the violet-flaring grimoire into the ancient stone, sealing a pact that could free his friend and shatter the noble's hold. Chiron feels his honor ignite while the noble's scorn threatens exile, forcing him to choose between his cherished friendship and the ruin of his lineage. The violet rune pulses ominously, hinting at a hidden price, as the sunrise reveals shadowy figures converging on Chiron's path, ready to claim his soul.
This is peak fiction. Hit subscribe on Manwa with Hari so you don't miss the peak.
Sir One clutched the cracked leather tome as the wandering mage sliced open the veil, pulling the boy into the humming spirit zone. Light spiraled around his outstretched hands, and the flow of magic surged, proof that bloodlines mattered not. Across the kingdom, Hyun-woo sensed the ripple, his infinite spell humming in anticipation.
Chiron's trembling fingers traced the ancient sigil, the spirit zone blooming like ghostly fire around him. The wandering mage whispers, "Your blood may be peasant, but your mind is noble." Hyunwoo watches from the academy balcony, eyes alight with the same fierce curiosity, while Princess Arya leans forward, daring destiny to bend to their infinite potential.
You feel the pressure of every ancestral eye as the elder leans in, his aura crackling with authority. He tells Sure-One that the family's survival depends on loyalty to the kingdom, not on childish bonds. He offers a thin mercy. No punishment if Sure-One continues to protect the childish grandson by nurturing that fragile friendship. Sure-One swallows the offer, his mind racing between gratitude and the dread of betraying his own values. He nods, accepting the conditional grace, while the weight of future expectations settles like a stone in his chest. The answer is already too late. The household gathers as the butler pulls a creaking carriage into the courtyard, the plan to return Sure-One's parents to their home hanging in the air. Everyone knows a lifelong bond cannot be broken, yet the logistics of escorting a family across war-torn lands block their intentions. The butler bows, repeats the order, and the carriage doors swing open, revealing the weary parents. Sure-One's eyes widen, his heart thunders, and he steps forward, ready to escort them despite the looming threat of bandits. The cost? Their safety now rides on a fragile promise. What comes next changes everything. Sure-One steps onto the academy's training yard, brandishing his blade as the swordmaster forces him into a sudden duel against a brash aspiring mage, sparks flying as steel meets raw spellcraft. He fights to shatter doubts, hoping the victory proves his magical potential and secures his family's fragile hope, while fearing failure would condemn him to disgrace and erase his chance at knighthood. The clash ends with both combatants breathing heavily, the mage's final incantation hanging unresolved, leaving the Academy's masters to decide whether Sure-One's reckless power earns respect or a fatal reprimand.
That impact was felt through the screen. Subscribe to Manwa with Hari for more. Sure-One clutches the grimoire he snatched from the wandering mage, heart thundering as the spirit zone ripples around him. The ethereal currents surge, painting his veins with raw arcane fire. Proof that blood, not birthright, fuels true magic. He whispers the newfound incantation, and the air shatters, announcing the peasant's rise toward the infinite spell destiny.
Sure-One stumbles into the wandering mage's camp, eyes wide as the old sorcerer slices the air, conjuring a shimmering portal to the spirit zone. The mage's voice crackles, "Step forward, peasant, magic isn't blood, it's will." Sure-One plunges through the veil, heart pounding, and feels raw arcane currents surge, igniting the spark of his infinite potential.
Sure-One claws his way out of the mud-soaked stable, eyes blazing as the wandering mage shatters the barrier between worlds. The mage thrusts his palm toward Cyrone's forehead, and the boy plunges into the shimmering spirit zone, feeling raw arcane currents flood his veins. Around them, the Hunter family watches, unaware that a peasant's first spell could shatter the noble-only myth forever.
Azura. GG, thank you.
Sure-One stands before the noble family, desperate to earn their trust for his son's future. He wants the family's blessing, but the gentry's cold reputation scares him. He forces a polite bow, hides his trembling hands, and repeats the family's name with reverence. A hushed council gathers around a dusty table, the family head spreading a forged document that lists Agent Chiron DDD as a noble heir. The plan promises instant nobility, promising Sure-One a seat at the academy. The youngest cousin, still childless, frowns, fearing the scheme will ruin his own lineage. Cyrone's mother nods, insisting the ruse is their only path forward. With ink drying, the decree signs his name as a noble, granting him a ticket to the academy's doors. Yet the forged seal burns his conscience, marking him as a fraud. "I would like to adopt Chiron." The paper grants access, but the shadows behind it grow longer.
Sure-One shatters the forged noble decree, tearing the false heir's seal from the council's table and declaring he will forge his own destiny without noble blood. He loses the fragile promise of instant nobility, feeling the crushing weight of his father's expectations and his sister's shattered hopes, while clinging to the love of his humble roots. The council's silent gazes linger on the torn parchment, leaving Cyrone's future hanging between exile and a perilous, unearned path to the Magic Academy.
New recaps go live every week. Subscribe to Manwa with Hari before this one is buried in your feed. Sir One clutches the battered tome, eyes blazing as the Hunter family's hearth flickers behind him. A wandering mage materializes, thrusting his palm into Cyrone's chest and ripping open the shimmering veil of the spirit zone. Mana surges, painting his veins with raw, unbound power. Defying noble edicts, he grins, fingers splayed, ready to rewrite the world's magical destiny.
Sir One clutches the weather-worn tome, its pages flaring as he steps into the shimmering spirit zone. The ethereal currents surge through his veins, igniting a dormant spark that shatters the noble-only myth. Around him, the Hunter family's cheers echo, while distant nobles watch, their grip on mana trembling at the birth of an infinite mage.
Cyrone discovers a hidden alcove etched with the phrase, Jin Sur 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 Sur, Chong Ming, a cryptic mantra promising boundless wealth and destiny. He believes the words could unlock the mana flow his father once guarded. The ancient script confuses him. The language feels foreign, a barrier between his trembling hands and the power he craves. He presses his palm to the stone, feeling a faint pulse, then steps back, fearing the unknown might consume him. The moment passes, leaving the inscription glowing faintly, a silent promise that danger still lurks. If the stone awakens, everything could change. Cyrone watches his father's shoulders slump, the old man still haunted by past sins.
Sir One, rescued from a cold stable by a Hunter clan, devoured every dusty tome he could find, his mind igniting with histories of mana. When a wandering mage slipped him into the shimmering spirit zone, his blood sang with raw power. Now, reborn as Aaron, he storms the Royal Academy, shattering noble dogma and daring the council to confront his infinite potential.
Sir One brandishes the weather-worn map as he races through the Hunter family's camp, eyes flicking toward the distant ridge where the spirit zone shimmers like a broken mirror.
Sir One slams the ancient grimoire against the glowing glyph, unleashing a torrent of raw mana that shatters the tower's seal and ignites the spirit zone's fractured mirror. He watches Lisa's hopeful eyes fade as the unleashed power threatens to consume the Hunter clan's firelight, forcing him to choose between his newfound family's survival and the legacy pulsing in his blood. The council's shadowed envoys appear on the ridge, their eyes locking onto the flickering rune, promising retribution unless Sir One seals the breach, leaving the fate of the spirit zone hanging on a trembling breath.
A dark fantasy masterpiece. Subscribe to Manwa with Hari to see the darkness unfold. Sir One, once left to rot in a stable, claws his way into a Hunter family's hearth, devouring every tome he can find. One twilight, a wandering mage drags him into the shimmering spirit zone, igniting the spark that defies noble edicts. Across the kingdom, Jun Li harnesses infinity magic, rewrites academy law, and squares off with Lord Varkas as the abyssal Arcane looms.
Sir One clutches the tattered grimoire as the wandering mage thrusts his hand into the shimmering vortex, pulling the peasant's soul into the spirit zone. Electric runes flare across his eyes, and for the first time he feels raw arcane currents pulse through his veins, proof that bloodlines don't bind magic, only will.
Cyrone's mind races as the family head mentions a house in the city, promising a future far from the fields. He wants to accept the offer, yet the memory of his father's Hunter roots and the villagers' disdain for magic gnaws at his resolve. He argues that rejecting the aid only fuels his fire, and the Hunter's generous gifts feel like chains. He decides to hide his enrollment at the Magic Academy, fearing his father's disappointment would crush his ambition. The cost? A widening rift with his parents, and the silent promise that his secret will soon demand a price he cannot yet see.
The headmaster gestures toward the evaluation hall, insisting it's just a simple ranking. You stare at the doorway that leads to the spirit zone, the gateway to real magic. He asks if you can enter, testing whether you even understand the concept. A spark of confidence flares as you nod, feeling the zone pulse beneath you. He watches, surprised, as the barrier parts with only your will. The moment proves you can open the spirit zone alone, a skill no teacher ever saw in a peasant. Yet the headmaster's eyes linger on the mischance to train you earlier.
Headmaster forces the protagonist to attempt the dangerous spell again, unleashing a wild burst of raw magic that tears the classroom ceiling open to the spirit zone beyond. Protagonist feels humiliation as the oldest student, yet glimpses a hidden glyph offering a chance to master technique, risking loss of safety for power. A trembling apprentice grips the crystal, eyes locked on the ominous shall symbol, while the cracked ceiling pulses, promising an unknown gateway that could consume them all. The voice, the music, the pacing. You know it's top tier. Subscribe to Manwa with Hari.
Cyrone's trembling fingers flip open a battered grimoire as the wandering mage thrusts his palm toward the flickering veil of the spirit zone. Light erupts, spiraling around the orphan's eyes, and the ethereal walls part like curtains. With a gasp, Sir One steps through, feeling raw mana surge into his veins, proof that even a low-born peasant can ignite the infinite spark of true sorcery.
Cyrone's trembling hands clutch the cracked tome as the wandering mage shatters the veil, thrusting him into the pulsating spirit zone. Light erupts, spiraling glyphs igniting his veins. The low-born peasant feels power surge like a storm.
Yes. I mean it.
If you want more daily recaps, hit that subscribe button now. The instructor points at the glowing circle and tells everyone the number marks a 6-meter radius for the spirit zone. Azura watches the gauge rise, then asks, "What color do you feel most clearly?" The room erupts with a shouted red. The answer feels like a firestorm inside their minds. The headmaster nods, praising the effort, and mentions Mike's 12-meter zone from last term. The class laughs, realizing each new cohort pushes the limits farther than the last. Chiron's mind races. He knows the zone's radius might stretch beyond the usual 3 meters, but the teacher pushes him to name a color instead. He glances at the shimmering aura, sees a sea of blue washing over everything. He shouts, "Blue!" hoping the hue proves his control. The instructor frowns, noting that blue usually means convergence, an unstable state. Classmates exchange uneasy looks, realizing his zone might be too large, too volatile. The teacher snaps, "Your zone is massive, but can you keep it steady?" The pressure mounts, and Chiron feels his confidence wobble like a candle flame.
Blue everywhere.
The next test will test his balance, not his sight.
Chiron's mind erupts as the instructor forces him to count invisible, pulsating spheres, causing a cascade of numbers and symbols to slam into his chest, igniting a raw, untamed magical surge. He feels the crushing weight of his inadequacy crush his confidence. Yet the sudden surge grants him a fleeting glimpse of true power, threatening to shatter his fragile self-worth forever. The teacher demands he name the color of an ever-expanding aura, leaving Chiron trembling on the brink of collapse as the endless, shimmering blue threatens to swallow his sanity.
Be a legend. Hit the button. Subscribe to Manwa with Hari. Sir One clutches the cracked tome, its pages humming as the mage's fingertips brush his palm, tearing the veil to the spirit zone. Light flickers, and the air shivers with raw mana, proof that bloodline matters not. Across the shattered sanctuaries, Junhee feels the infinite core pulse, daring both peasants and nobles to claim the boundless power.
Sir One lunges into the frosted clearing, the spirit zone rippling like a glass lake beneath his outstretched hands. The hunter family's whispered chants blend with the wind, and a silvered mage materializes, thrusting a crackling rune into the void. Power surges, shattering the icy veil. Chiron's eyes blaze with infinite promise, defying the noble's decree.
Sir One steps onto the academy's courtyard, his boots crushing fresh snow. He glances at the towering stone doors, feeling the weight of countless eyes on his back. A senior student whispers. He looks old for a newcomer, casting doubt on his youth. Sir One clenches his fists, refusing to let whispers define him. He walks forward, each stride echoing his resolve to rewrite the noble-only myth. The price of this entrance? He must bear the suspicion of peers while proving his worth in a world that never expected him.
He looks quite old, but... Sir One clutches the cracked tome, eyes blazing as the wandering mage slices the veil between worlds, thrusting him into the humming spirit zone. Mana crackles around his outstretched palms, defying the noble-only decree. He grins, feeling infinite currents surge, proof that a peasant's hunger can outshine aristocratic birth.
Sir One steps onto the dusty courtyard, his hunter family's eyes watching as the wandering mage flickers into the spirit zone. The mage's hand snaps, pulling a shimmering veil of raw mana around Cyrone's fingertips. Only nobles bend this power. The mage snarls, but Cyrone's pulse quickens, his infinite potential ignites.
Sir One, once astray in a hunter's stable, devours a grimoire and feels the spirit zone pulse beneath his fingertips.
Sir One breaches the spirit zone as the wandering mage shatters the veil, a torrent of raw mana spiraling around his fingertips, igniting the cracked grimoire and reshaping the ley line flow. He feels the weight of the council's scorn lift as fellow students stare in awe, gaining fleeting validation while the lingering whisper of his low-born heritage threatens to crush his newfound power. The masters demand undeniable proof of his mana mastery, and the unstable veil flickers ominously, promising a catastrophic backlash that could erase Cyrone's chance at acceptance.
Thousands of us are reading this together. Subscribe to Manwa with Hari and join the discussion.
Sir One lunges into the shimmering portal, the spirit zone rippling like liquid glass around him. A robed mage thrusts a crystal into his palm, and the raw surge of ancient magic detonates through his veins. Books flutter from his satchel, pages igniting as his eyes flash with formulas, proof that a peasant can shatter noble destiny. Sir One snatches the tattered grimoire from the fire-charred stall, eyes blazing as the ancient sigils pulse beneath his fingertips. Across the courtyard, Lord Valen's armored guards converge, swords drawn, but Myril summons a vortex of sapphire flame, scattering them like moths.
Cyrone's trembling hand clutches the cracked rune, and with a guttural chant he summons a 10th circle fireball that erupts like a living sun. The blaze arcs toward Myril, who flicks her wrist, her own magic weaving a sapphire shield that shatters the inferno into harmless sparks. Junho watches, heart pounding, realizing the infinite spell is no longer a distant myth. The answer is already too late. You feel the rush of the crowd as Sir One shouts, "We can reach it!" His eyes lock on the distant platform, the prize that could prove his worth. The Class 7 boys laugh, mocking his ambition, their smug grin a wall of doubt.
The class erupts as Amy, the Class 4 prodigy, steps forward, eager to claim the honor of the demonstration. She wants the crowd's adulation and the headmaster's approval, but she also fears the spotlight that always follows her success. The murmurs of jealous male students swirl, tugging at her confidence. Amy lifts her wand, channeling a bright red ice spell that crackles with raw power, silencing the room for a heartbeat. The spell erupts, painting the air with frosted shards that glitter like knives, leaving the spectators in awe and the rivals seething. The triumph fuels her reputation, yet the sudden surge leaves her palms trembling, a warning that her magic may be burning out too fast.
I don't want the attention right now.
Sir One tears his spirit from his body, a luminous thread hovering above his head, shattering the crowd's mockery as the detached form ignites the spirit zone. He stakes his reputation on proving true magehood, feeling the weight of every jeering glance while daring to transcend his peasant limits, craving honor that could finally silence his doubters. Amy steps forward, eyes blazing, ready to claim the spotlight, but Cyrone's destabilizing aura threatens to explode, leaving the class on the brink of catastrophe and the spirit zone's true nature unrevealed.
The abyss is staring back. Subscribe to Manwa with Hari. Sir1 cradles the cracked grimoire in his calloused hands, the ink flickering like a heartbeat. The Hunter family watches, breath held, as he whispers the ancient sigil and the world shivers. A vortex of azure light erupts, pulling his soul into the spirit zone. Sparks of power surge through his veins, proof that a peasant can shatter noble bloodlines and become the infinite mage. Sir1 barrels through the dusty stable, clutching a tattered grimoire, while Junho's hand trembles over the ancient tome that whispers of infinite magic. A rogue mage lunges, but Myra's arrow shatters his dark shield, and Professor Quan thrusts Sir1 into the shimmering spirit zone.
Cyrone's calloused hands fumble with the grimoire, the ink shimmering as his mind slips into the spirit zone. Suddenly, the air crackles, a vortex of ancient sigils swirls around him, and the unseen magic flickers into view, proof that even a peasant can breach the noble's mystic veil. What comes next changes everything.
The classroom hums as the new transfer student steps forward. His eyes fixed on the shimmering boundary the teacher calls the image zone. He wants to prove he can control it, to earn the skeptical gazes of his peers. The room itself becomes the obstacle. The murmurs grow louder. The air thickens with doubt.
He decides the only way to keep the zone usable is to shrink it deliberately, believing a tighter field saves energy. He measures the invisible radius, whispering the required distance of 20 meters, and watches the boundary pulse inward. The mental strain spikes. Each contraction feels like a bite on his nerves. He clamps his jaw, forces the zone to compress, and succeeds as the perimeter tightens to the exact mark. The price is a tremor in his hands that makes the next incantation shaky. Panic flares when the zone suddenly expands beyond his control, ballooning to 2 meters then exploding to 41 meters, dwarfing any training reference.
Sir1 forces the runaway spirit zone into a spiraling vortex, compressing the chaotic energy into a razor-thin field that snaps shut around the grimoire, shattering the expanding crystal sphere. Brian watches his confidence crumble as the zone explodes, realizing his miscalculation costs him the chance to prove his control and threatens his standing among the elite class. With the vortex humming unstable and hunters closing in, Sir1 hesitates, unsure whether the grimoire's power will burst outward or swallow them both alive.
I read the raw chapters so you don't have to. Pay it forward and subscribe to Manwa with Hari.